Welcome, everyone. We have a special episode. We have Coach Ricky Arnapol in the house. How are you, sir?
I am good. It's a sunny day here in Colorado, so I can't complain.
Congratulations on your recent 10th place finish at the U.S. Pro Road National Championships.
Thank you.
Listeners, Ricky is here and he is going to share some of his power numbers from the race.
Yeah, yeah. We've got some big numbers, some numbers that maybe might not seem impressive under the right context, but I hope you guys can glean a little insight into what it's like.
Yeah, so right off the bat, what was your OTS and time for the race?
So OTS, I think it actually might have been my highest OTS in a single day race or like any stage of a race. It was insanely high. If you can imagine percent of FTP, it was pretty high.
Speaking of percent of FTP, what was your whole race X power?
So on the file, it said 286, but then when you take that's, with a little warm up and a little cool down, it was 297 X power for the whole day. And then I think average power was somewhere around 255. So still like a relatively high, but the normalized, I think, or X power speaks a little bit more to how hard it was.
And what's your FTP?
So at sea level, it's about 355.
355. So 300 over 355. Yeah, you're racing a really high percentage of your FTP for the whole
Like,
5 hours. No wonder why your
yeah.
OTS was so high.
Yeah, I mean, X power wise, it's got to be around like a sweet spot kind of average for the whole race, which kind of makes sense
Mhm.
for the demanding nature of it.
Speaking of that, can you tell the listeners about any notable power outputs of the climbs or key sections of the race?
Yeah, so this year's course was in Charleston, West Virginia, and it is about 205 kilometers, I think like 123 miles, right around there. So it's a long day. It's hot. It's super humid, like deathly humid out there. And it's just really marked by two major climbs, Bridge Street and then the other climb I can't think of. They're both about 4 to 6 minutes long and they're really steep, especially Bridge Street. That's the hardest one. We do 2 laps without doing Bridge Street to start it. And then on the third lap, you do Bridge Street. And that's where the race completely exploded. And I went into Bridge Street fourth wheel behind eventual winner Quinn Simmons, behind my teammate, and then myself. So for Bridge Street leading up to it, we knew it was going to be a fight because it narrows a ton. So 6 minutes was at 416 before the climb. And so then you hit this roller, you get a little moment to recover, and then it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds at 524 watts, which was my highest
Wow.
power ever for that duration. That's about 8.6 watts per kilo. So
For 2 minutes.
for like 2.5 to 3 minutes. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's what like completely blew the race up in the first part. And that's actually where the eventual winner, Quinn Simmons, like got away kind of. And it was super early in the race. It was 30 miles into a 120 something mile day. So super windy.
Was that where he got away from you or y'all got away from the group?
There was already a break up the road. And so he
Uh-huh.
bridged with one of my teammates to that break.
Mhm.
And then I kind of like sat, I mean, I was pretty blown, but like I sat back and I was like, good situation. I got a teammate up there. So I was like perfectly happy with it. We didn't know he was going to drop everyone else and go solo, but that's how it played out.
8.6 watts per kilogram. You said that was your season best. Suffice it to say, if you're on form, you're probably riding, maybe some of the best of the season so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really kind of, I didn't have a great winter. I got injured. And so I didn't really start
Mhm.
training till February. But I think it's kind of like a testament to like things don't always go perfectly and you can still have a really good year. It just kind of meant that instead of being tired, like I am a lot of times coming off a European block, going into nationals, I was a lot fresher. And so I could really train going into it. So like form wise right now, yeah, is probably some of the best I've ever had.
Congratulations on getting 10th in the race. How do you feel about that? I mean, like, that's I mean, in my book, and to I know the athletes you coach, that's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah, it was my best finish in nationals. Everyone says it's one of the hardest courses we've probably had in a decade. And so I was really happy for it. We were kind of racing for second, but like hats off to Quinn Simmons. He's one of the best racers in the world. So racing for second against him is pretty good. And it just came down like in the last few laps. in the last lap on the final climb, my director was in my ear, like, you have to try something on this climb. Cause there were some good sprinters in there, like previous teammate Tyler Stites has a wicked sprint. I wasn't going to beat him in the sprint. Gavin Vlady
Yeah.
was in there. So, I knew I kind of had to try something, but it's the whole thing at these end of these really long races, everyone's just fried. And so,
Mhm.
like, we were all just kind of lobbing little attacks to try to separate the group in the last few miles. And so on the final climb, I was like, all right, I gotta attack here. So I think looking at this, I did. And again, it seems slightly unimpressive, but under the context of this is after 4,100 kJs burn, is like a little bit different. But it was 2 minutes at 400, followed by 2 minutes at 317. So you can see how steep of a drop off I had. It was really nothing left in the tank at that point. And I didn't really
Right.
get much separation at all. So, but yeah, I think I'm still really happy with it, and I can't complain.
We've been talking a lot about durability, and you talk about what you could have made for 4 minutes at the beginning of the race, and then you made like that much power for 4 minutes at the after 4,100 kilojoules.
Yeah.
And folks, that's kind of like what durability is. It's like your resistance to not getting tired and be still able to make power. But the fact it sounded like the rest of the competition was tired too.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all like are working on similar things at that point. That fatigue resistance durability component is so important in our training that everyone's kind of like, doing sprints after 3,000 kJs or doing a threshold effort. And that's kind of what it comes down to. But again, like, this was probably the most extreme version. I don't know if I've ever trained after 4,000 kJs. I barely kind of get to that point in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about nutrition? Like how many gels did you consume? Like what was your strategy going into the race?
Yeah. So, like I said, it was hot. It wasn't crazy hot, which was good because I haven't done a ton of heat prep yet this year. But, the goal for me, I'm like, I can't do like 120, 150 grams an hour. It's a lot. I've kind of trained myself to be at 100 grams an hour, and that's really good. So that's what I stuck with.
Hmm.
I did 900 milligrams of sodium per hour. So a little under a gram of sodium per hour, which worked really well. Even when it's a bit cooler, that sodium loss is pretty high. And then I usually go with straight water or just water with light electrolytes in it. So for this one, it was just straight water because at that kind of intensity, heat and humidity, your GI system can get a little strained. I'm sure like a lot of us have felt that GI discomfort. So I knew that could be a factor. So the way I kind of battle it a little bit is to just try and do as much water as possible and not do much carb mix or anything.
What did that come out in terms of like how many gels per hour and how many gels total?
So with our sponsor Carbs Fuel, it's pretty easy for us. They're 50-gram gels. So I just made sure I did 2 per hour. It was super simple.
Mhm.
And there was even a point, I think, maybe with like 50K to go, where I started to get some GI distress, and I just like skipped 15 minutes because I try to usually do it like 15 minutes and 45 minutes and try to keep it's not perfect, but it's a good way to keep yourself on track. And there might have been a time, I think, yeah, like 50K to go, where I had to skip it, wait a little bit till my stomach settled down, and then kept on. But it just meant 10 gels, 50 grams, 500 grams of carbs. Gosh, what would that be? 4,500 milligrams of sodium. So a lot of sodium. But
Yeah.
in the end, it like worked out. I mean, everyone is cramping at the end no matter what. But I think if you're fueled properly, you kind of can make it a little bit farther.
How many water bottles did you drink during that time?
Yeah, I was trying to think, it was 12 laps, started with 2 bottles, and I took a bottle almost every lap. So at least 14 bottles that were probably 16-ounce bottles. So like a ton. And I mean, I'm also getting bottles and pouring them right on my back and then tossing them, getting ice packs. Luckily, we had 5 to 8 people on course with bottles. So like there was never a point when I couldn't really get a bottle, usually on one of the climbs. So it made it a lot easier to kind of stay fueled the entire day.
In summary, 500 grams of carbohydrate in total, so 100 per hour.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're probably doing close to 3 bottles of water per hour. So 16 ounces. What's that times three? Well, it's like 48 ounces of water per hour
Yeah.
and sodium too. How are you getting your sodium? Was it
In
tablets in the water
in the
or
gels. Yeah, the
in the
Cardsteel
gel?
gels have 450 per gel, which is a new one they just came out with, which is something like we've been wanting because it's kind of like, do you put electrolytes in your bottles? Do you put carbs in there? Like, how do you get your electrolytes? So this makes it super easy.
Moving a little bit forward off of nutrition and power numbers, what was your peak level this season? Were you coming off of? Because we talked about durability, and durability is so closely related to your training load and how much you've been training lately. But what's your peak level so far this year?
So that's another kind of interesting part about this season with not really being able to train a ton in December and January, which is actually like usually for us road cyclists is when we do some of our peak volume or in those winter months. Usually I would be at a level of at least like 100 to even maybe 120 in February. I
Mhm.
peaked at 100 before pro nationals and then came down to 95, which is way lower than what I would have ever had been at this point of year. Like usually, you start at a 120, you kind of fluctuate a little bit, you get these huge, overloads with racing. You might be 130, 135, 140 even. And then you start to drop down throughout the year a little bit. But this, I was actually able to increase my level throughout the year with racing and time it
Mhm.
really well. So like I kind of had a pretty decent peak coming
Mhm.
right into this.
Mhm.
So, I think it also shows that it was a lot of specificity throughout the year. Like the racing was the racing, and it's great. It is great training along with racing, but I was able to train really specifically for stuff like pronats this year.
In terms of specificity, like these 4 to 5 minute VO2 max climbs.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of times what will happen, and because I raced a lot less, it's usually racing and then a lot of zone two aerobic work to keep things balanced because you can't just be doing intervals and racing all the time. So with less racing, it meant I could do more specific training because I had less fatigue. So
Mhm.
a session that I worked on a lot to 3 minute efforts where it's a really hard punch and then you settle into 2 3 minutes of VO2 to kind of simulate that initial kick up the climb and then having to hold on. So that's something I was able to do over and over and over.
Kinda like a over under, like
Exactly. Yeah.
without the over under over.
It's just the over and then see what you can hold. And it's something I actually
Mhm.
give a lot of my athletes now. It's like, I think a good, just high end workout, good lactate clearance kind of thing. So it's really good for the punchy style of racing, like pronats.
So speaking of all those hard workouts, what's your number one go-to recovery technique?
So, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Normatec boots. We've had them for a few years, and whether the science says it does a ton, it doesn't matter. It makes me feel good, and I've had a lot of physical therapists in the past say if it makes you feel good, then that's like the best thing you could do. Your body responds to that. So, love the Normatec boots. Um, I love just a foam rolling session. I try to do it every single day. I try to stretch every day, and then I use the sauna for kind of the heat adaptation gains, but sometimes I do it just to relax, chill out, just do like get a little sweat in later in the day. But other than that, I just eat as much as I can after big rides. That's the biggest thing you can do for recovery is eat and sleep well.
How many hours of sleep do you average per night?
I'm not like a crazy high hour sleeper, but I usually get right about 8. If I get like in between 7:30 and 8:30, I'm pretty good. I think actually
Mhm.
on days that I train harder, I don't sleep as well. Usually
Yeah.
my body's a little elevated, so on recovery days, I sometimes I'll get like 9 hours of sleep coming off a recovery day.
Everyone, listen to that. That's what you need to strive to. Speaking of recovery, along the same lines, you mentioned you eat a lot, which is, sleeping and eating is the name of the game. What's your favorite like go-to recovery snack or meal when you're on the road, not when you're in your own kitchen?
Yeah. Yeah. On the road, like we're fortunate that we have Swannies that cook us food, but they're not like Michelin star chefs. They're cooking us pretty simple stuff. It's honestly not that different from what I'd have at home. Creature of habit, like rice and eggs, is just kind of a really simple, like 1 cup of rice, 3 eggs, bunch of salt, maybe a little hot sauce right down the hatch. Like easy. So chicken and eggs, rice and eggs, rice and chicken, those both work super well.
Does your Swanee use like a killer set of Tupperware?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we've got the nice little Tupperware separated. Sometimes they'll put something special in there that like, especially after a race like Pronats where we don't have to race the next day.
Mhm.
Sometimes we'll get something that's, a little naughty, maybe a cupcake or
A
some
treat.
cake or a treat, some cookies. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the night of Pronats and I might have had at least a pizza to myself. So,
There you go.
pizza and a few
That's awesome.
beers.
Well, you deserved it with the 10th place like that. What do you have planned the rest of the summer? What's next for Ricky?
So I was supposed to have a pretty light summer. I was gonna go do steamboat travel, but sometimes when you're kind of on a hot streak, they pull you into stuff. So a few days ago, I got told I was going to Tour de Beauce in Quebec. So I
All
head
right.
there at 3 a.m. tomorrow, hop on a plane to Canada, and I'll do that. I'll come back, I'll get some recovery, and I'm gonna take a mid-season break after that. I was supposed to take a mid-season break right after Pronats, but going to Canada instead. So I'll take a week off after Beauce, and then I'll do a big like 8-week training block for Vuelta Portugal, which is probably my number one season goal.
Is that towards the end of August?
Yeah, or it's
Yeah.
middle of August,
Mhm.
11 days. It's like the fourth Grand Tour, pretty much. I think they used to call Tour Langkawi like the fourth Grand Tour, but I think Vuelta Portugal is now the next longest race, so it's a big one.
The glamorous life of a professional road cyclist. Now that you're coming off 10th place, you go into Beauce. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners and the athletes you coach, like what you've learned about this as a whole?
Yeah, like I think it goes back to a lot of the things I've talked about. Like your season rarely goes perfect, and in January, if you were to ask me if I would have been stoked with a 10th place at Pronats, I would have been like, heck yes. Like I didn't even think I would be racing, for the first half of the year. So your season never goes perfectly. But if you just like roll with the punches, control what you can control, then you'll be fine. And then in the same regard, during the race, that third lap where I was doing 500 plus, I thought like there's no way I'm going to be able to do well in this race. I'm smoked. But like sometimes
Mhm.
you don't realize that everyone else around you is also smoked. And so you just don't give up until the legs stop turning. You never know what's going to happen in a race. In that moment, I was like, I, I'm so tired and I've got 100 miles to go. And then I looked back and there was like 25 guys left in the race. So you never know how a season's going to pan out. You never know how a race is going to pan out. You control what you can control and then you just keep going.
Wise words. Thanks so much for sharing everything with us. Congratulations again on the
Thank
fine
you.
10th place and good luck at Beauce, I guess tomorrow.
Yeah.
And well, I guess
Starts
like
on
first stage
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Cutting it close.
Gosh. Yeah. Man, I remember coaching guys from that race and the biggest thing was not to flat in the poor like asphalt conditions of that race.
Yeah. It's not
It's a
good
wheel
road
wreck.
conditions. Yeah, it's a wheel wrecker. I think I looked like the highest temp of the week is like 57 degrees. So, and it's probably going to rain at some point. So I think that's just Canada for you.
Woo. All right. Well, we're sending you desert vibes as
Thank
you're
you.
racing in the rain.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This is Coach Ricky Arnapole, fresh off 10th place US Pro Road National Championships. If you vibe with what Coach Ricky is saying or want to talk with him further about your coaching, give us a visit over at fastcatcoaching.com. Go to Hire a Coach, check out Ricky, and get in touch with us. And I'm sure after he's done with Bose, he'd love to chat with you.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. You know what to do. Work hard, ride fast, have fun. And as always, FTFP.